Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen, along with my co-host Michael Doherty. And what we were saying earlier, we were talking about the tragic state that we're in right now when it comes to addiction, and Alex Ziegler that passed away, and every hour we're losing 5 children to it, and then we went into suicide prevention and social media, and I think we're going to now go into the bullying department.
Yeah, again, October is National Bullying Awareness Month.
Why does there have to be a month for that, Mike?
Just a point of, hey, think about this. I mean, I like that. I don't think
I do
you
too.
Do you?
No, I do. I'm just saying, but it's really sad sometimes when you think about there needs to be a month for all of us to talk about bullying when we should be talking about that always.
Exactly. Bullying should just be no more.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Bullying when we were kids, I mean, you go to the schoolyard and you get bullied. It's a little different today.
Yeah.
And you had a story, then we'll talk about the difference.
I did, yeah. And I'm going to keep this short because it didn't last for a very long time, but I was all of 6 years old, Cary, and I had just started the first grade. And back in the day, we didn't live very far from the school. And this was up in Anchorage, Alaska, by the way, which is important to the story, and you'll understand why in a moment. But I would walk to school and walk back home from school, and I did not have my parent accompany me or anything, and it was fine back then.
Right.
One day, I was walking along, and I rounded the corner, and I was on the sidewalk, and it's wintertime. It had been snowing, and
cold.
It was cold. Yeah, there were snow berms, where the trucks had come along and scraped the snow off the street. So there were big berms of snow along the sidewalk, and as I rounded the corner, I noticed that there were 2 guys. They were from elementary school, but one of them was really a big guy in my 6-year-old eyes, and then he had another person with him who looked a little bit more normal size. And I wrote about this later, by the way, and I nicknamed them because I didn't know who they were. I nicknamed them Mr. King Size and Mr. Regular. And as I got closer to them, I got the strange impression that they were going to do something to me, and I didn't know why. And as I walked up to them, I started to walk by, and the big guy stopped, Mr. King Size stood in front of me. He said, "Where do you think you're going?" And what happened was they started pushing me between the 2 of them, hitting me, and I didn't know who they were. I'd never seen them before in my life. I was terrified.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the 2 of them picked me up, and they stuffed me head first in the snowbank. And I'm a little claustrophobic, so that was extra special bad for me. And I couldn't breathe. It was horrible. Finally, they pulled me out of the snowbank. They pushed me around a little bit more, and then they shoved me on my way back home. So I went on home. When I got home, I didn't tell my mom or dad what happened because I didn't quite know what to say.
And most people don't.
I didn't quite know what to say. Again, I was only 6 years old. But I have to tell you that the next day I wasn't real thrilled about going to school. And then when school was over, I thought, I hope I don't see them again.
You know what you just said is another good point I want to talk about after your story.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times kids don't want to go to school when they're young, and we don't understand why. And there's a lot of this that could be involved.
Yeah. Well, so the next day I went back, and when I'm coming home, I round the corner, and oh no, there they are again. And I know what they're going to do to me, and there's nothing I could do about it. Being only 6 years old, I wasn't smart enough to figure out another route to go home.
Right.
So I just went walking up there, and sure enough, same thing. Mr. Big, Mr. King Size, and Mr. Regular were getting all over me, and it was horrible. This time when I went home, I told my mom and dad what happened, and they felt awful because, this is I had no idea why they were doing it. There was a strange phenomena to me. It made me feel terrible. Make themselves
feel better. That's
really exactly.
Really, kids can be mean.
So what my mom said to me was, "I'm going to meet you after school." So I thought, great. Well, I came out of school, and my mom wasn't there, and I started walking home because she said she'd meet me as I was walking home. I rounded the corner. There they were again. I went up to them. My mom's nowhere in sight. They start doing the same old, same old. All of a sudden, Mom appears.
Uh-oh.
Mom had some choice words for Mr. King Size and Mr. Regular.
I'm sure she did.
And,
they weren't so big anymore.
They weren't so big anymore, and I never saw them again, ever. I never knew their names. I never knew why they were doing it, except when I asked them the first time, "Why are you doing this?" And they said, "Because we don't like you. And we're just doing it." And we're going to do what we want to, and you can't stop us. So that was my bull. I've never been bullied since.
And look how long. And look how long you've carried it.
My entire life, I've written about it. I mean, as recently as a couple of years ago, I finally sat down and wrote the story of what happened to me, and I called it Mr. King Size and Mr. Regular.
And why is it so important for us to talk about this? Because this happens all the time to our kids.
And I know how it makes somebody feel, and so do you. You've also had a bullying incident.
Oh, yeah. When I was young in New York, I mean, they were bullying me pretty badly, and then I came to California. I was 6, 7, 8.
Oh, really?
Came to California and joined a boxing gym and all that kinds of stuff, and when I went back to New York, they weren't bullying me anymore. But I still remember all that, you know. I kind of feel good because they stopped.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. The point is when you're young and you're going through that, you feel so alone and afraid, and you can't figure out why that's happening. And as you said, as you take it into an adulthood, and it still has scars, and you still think about it. It's the stuff that haunts you when you're in bed sometimes, until you, like you said, you wrote about it and you took care of business and you can talk about it. But our kids have a lot of secrets. Yeah. And if we don't know what's going on with them, they can really be dangerous. And that's also, and when it comes to suicide and all that stuff, a lot of people, we were talking to the Lassiter kid. I know Jeff, the father. This kid was a big kid, and he was picked on and picked on and picked on and picked on. And one day he just lost it. And he went to school with a gun and put a bullet in himself.
So sad.
So sad.
Well, in your article, you continue on, and this is good information for anyone listening out there that's wondering how pervasive this is. Listen to this. 1 out of 4 kids is bullied. 77% of students are bullied mentally, verbally, and physically. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot, Cary.
It's a ton worse today than it's ever been because, like I said in the beginning of the show, is in the old days, you got bullied at school. So if you don't go to school, if you find a different route, if you told the teacher, if your mom comes, there were things that could be done. Today, it's that social media. And we've all seen on the news where a little girl killed herself and everybody said, go, kill yourself on social media. And she did.
How awful.
I mean, it's just terrible.
Well, listen to this. 1 out of 5
It's
kids.
Actually, it's like bullying on steroids.
Oh, I know. That's really sad. 1 out of 5 kids admits to being a bully or doing some bullying. Nearly 8% of students miss a day of class per month for fear of bullies.
Say that number again.
That's 8% of students miss a day of class per month for fear of bullies. Every month. And I know how that feels because I didn't want to go back to school.
So 8 out of 100 kids will miss school once a month because they're afraid to go.
Now, here's one. In the restroom at school, 43% of students fear harassment. That's close to half the population, Cary.
These are real numbers.
Wow.
We didn't make them up.
Nationally, 100,000 students carry a gun to school. 100,000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But and you know what? How many kids that I've dealt with that they carry knives in their cars or on the person or guns because they're afraid. The problem with that is, and this is families really need to talk to their kids. If you get into a situation where you get afraid and you have no weapon, you're going to get out of that situation somehow. If you get into a situation and you're afraid and you have a weapon, you're going to pull that weapon out. And then it's a prescription for disaster. Because once that weapon comes out and you use it, you're the one who ends up going to jail and somebody gets hurt. So we really need to make sure our kids feel safe, and we really need to make sure they don't have weapons.
Here's another astonishing number. This is almost unimaginable. In secondary schools, 282,000 students are physically attacked each month. Do the math on that times 12. That's horrific. 282,000 students are physically attacked each month in secondary schools. Among middle school students, 90% have said they have had their feelings hurt online. You were just talking about that. That's almost 100% teens getting their feelings hurt online because of things other teens say.
Kids can be very, very mean.
They sure can.
I mean, a whole lot meaner than adults. And when somebody's being bullied on the internet or on social media, you got to remember these are children that don't have coping skills yet. Mm-mm. So whatever we would feel, they feel intensified. So if they're hurt, they're really hurt.
Big time.
Yeah, so it's really something that could become very tragic very quickly.
And here's what people have to understand. Bullying can be verbal, it can be physical, or it can be via the internet. And it can severely affect the victim's self-image, social interactions, and school performance, often leading to insecurity, lack of self-esteem, and depression in adulthood. So this carries on these problems you take with you. School dropout rates and absences among victims of bullying are much higher than among other students, which makes sense.
Well, look at it this way. Most of these kids have a few hundred people following them, right? So if somebody blasts them on social media, that means all those people see it. So not only it's really embarrassing, humiliating. I mean, it's horrible.
Now, just talking about the bullies themselves for a second, studies have shown that children who have been identified as a bully by age 8 are 6 times more likely to have a criminal conviction by age 24.
Makes sense.
And then they continue to be bullies as adults and are prone to becoming child and spousal abusers. It's like having an infection you can't get rid of.
Yeah, well, and it really does. It starts at home, guys. I mean, this is one of those kind of things that I believe, and I'm not going to blame parents, but I believe that when we're raising children, those are conversations that we need to have. Treat people with respect. Treat people the way you want to be treated. If you're a person that's kind of, how do I want to say this politically, if you're prejudiced or racial and you're saying stuff like that in front of your kids, you're teaching them what we don't need in this world is hatred and anger.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't need that. We need our kids to be nice and respectful and love everybody.
I have to tell you something my father told me when I was still in elementary school. I think I was in about the 5th grade. And he called me aside and he said, I want to tell you something. He said, if you pick a fight, no matter whether you win or lose,
right,
you're going to have to deal with me.
Yeah.
That was his way of telling me, you don't go around doing that.
Right. And you always give a person an out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I taught my kids too. If somebody starts something with you, and give them an out if you can. You always want to give somebody an out. You don't want to. There's no reason to get into any kind of violence unless it's really to protect your life.
So we've talked about bullying, but I think it's important to kind of define bullying behavior. What is a bully? Many people think this behavior is easy to find, that their image of bullying might be of a physically intimidating boy beating up a smaller classmate. But parents need to know that bullying behaviors can be much more complex and varied than that stereotype.
Yeah.
For example, harmful bullying can also occur quietly and covertly through gossip or on the internet, causing emotional damage. And we see that.
Which I'll tell you, some of that emotional bullying, the mental bullying is even worse than the physical.
And here's the definition of bullying.
It scars people like you.
Yeah.
You're scarred forever.
Yeah. Bullying, if the behavior hurts or harms another person physically or emotionally, it's bullying. If the targets have difficulty stopping the behavior directed at them and struggle to defend themselves, it's bullying. Many definitions include a statement about the imbalance of power, described as when the student with the bullying behavior has more power, either physically, socially, or emotionally, such as a higher social status, is physically larger or emotionally intimidating. None of that sounds good.
No, it's kind of interesting because I deal with a lot of children, as you know, teenagers. And there's so many boys, but even more in girls that really have a hard time. They don't want to go to school. They have a hard time making friends. They're jealousy issues all over the place. So it's kind of, we really need to keep an eye on our children and what's going on. If they don't want to go to school, if they're isolating in their rooms and stuff like that, really pay attention to what's going on.
Well, here's something for parents that you need to listen to. In the last decade, our nation has witnessed a new phenomenon among the youth in America, a spike in bully-related suicides among teens and preteens, which has caused school administrators and legislators to rethink the current course of action when dealing with that in the school system. Right. So this has gotten a lot worse. And there are a lot of people out there who make money professionally going around to schools with anti-bullying messages.
Right.
Unfortunately, we aren't getting on top of it, apparently. Unfortunately, this is running wild, and it's causing lives to be lost.
And the reason why is here, right here, social media. So I'm not knocking social media. I think social media's got some great stuff, but along with the great comes some pretty scary stuff. Yeah,
because good things, we can be turned to use as bad things.
Correct.
It's very much like, and this is there are probably a lot of people that want to argue about this out there, but when you're looking at gun control, guns, if used properly, people hunt with them, right? They may, as a hobby, target practice, because becoming a good shot is a neat thing. I did that when I was in Alaskan.
I go shooting now. It's very fun.
It is a lot of fun. And
my daughter whips me when it comes to skeet shooting.
Oh,
so
really?
What are you going to do?
But then
it's a little embarrassing, Mike.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. And as somebody who was raised in Alaska, I sympathize with you, Cary.
Good, thanks. I appreciate that.
I'm sure you put on your big boy pants when you go out there.
I have no choice. And I know I'm just going to go and get whipped.
But here's what happens. People have taken guns and used them to harm other people. And so now we have this humongous debate going on in our country about how do we deal with this. And I always say, it isn't the guns that kill people. It's the people behind the guns that pull the trigger.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing for bullies.
Yeah.
They need to learn that that's not right, and they need to be taught that that's not right.
Well, I believe that, we all have a responsibility. People want to blame the schools, and no, I think the schools have a responsibility to keep an eye on it and try to control it when it happens. But I really believe, and I hate to say this, but it starts at home.
Oh, yeah.
We are our kids' teachers, and we need to spend time, and we need to teach our kids what's right and wrong, because we all know what's right and wrong, that's for sure, but it starts at home.
It does, and people need to speak with their kids about what do you do if you become bullied. Don't just leave them hanging. They need to know what they can do, what their options are.
And there's lots of options.
And there are options. You
can go to school. And by the way, if your kid goes to school and it's continuing to happen, go to school with them. There's plenty of stuff you can do. Even if they're young, go to class with them for a day.
Well, I was 6 years old, so my mother showed up, and I didn't have any problem with that. If I was in junior high, I might have had
an issue with it, but there's other ways of dealing with it, because the school could help you then, too.
And all my mother had to do was have a little short conversation with
a 6-year-old.
And they understood that wasn't going to happen anymore, and thankfully it didn't.
Well, that's because your mom was a bully.
My mom, she was a bully. It helped.
It helped, exactly.
She turned their method on them, I guess.
Exactly. Well, sometimes
I don't think she bullied them. I think she just told them what was going to happen.
I'm sure.
And they weren't real thrilled with the possibilities.
No, I'm just playing.
It wasn't they didn't think it was worth it to keep doing it, because what would happen to them would be a lot worse than sticking my head in a snowbank.
Exactly. And you know what? Bullies only bully people they can get away with.
That's right.
Bullies only do it because they want the control and power.
Yeah.
It's a self-esteem thing that maybe they're lacking.
Yes.
And people only do those kind of behaviors because they can get away with it.
And the online bullying, that actually points out another thing that we talk about here all the time, and this is something you bring up a lot, Cary, and that is you need to know what your children are doing online.
Yes.
What's going on?
I was going to say at any age for sure, but really when they're young, you want to monitor that computer, because there's so much stuff that's been going on. People are talking about predators. To me, that's a very small piece of what it is. It's more of the bullying and the social media and that kind of stuff that you really have to keep an eye on when it comes to your children. On that note, it's time to take a break. This is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Welcome back to Families in Action here on KHTS, AM 1220, your hometown station. I'm I'm Michael Doherty along with Cary Quashen, and we have been talking about October being National Bullying Awareness Month. Cary, moms and dads have to pay particular attention to what's going on right now. We don't want anybody to be bullied. No. You've told your story about being bullied. I was bullied.
We don't want anyone to be bullied, and we don't want anyone to be a bully.
No.
Because if you think about that, if you have a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 16-year-old or whatever age, and they have to bully someone to feel good, there's something wrong with that picture.
Desperately.
So it's kind of one of those. And what you said, if somebody at a young age is bullying people, they're so much more apt to become a criminal and get arrested later in life.
Statistics prove that out, Cary. And not only do they become a criminal, but it's highly likely that they'll become a child abuser and a spousal abuser.
Right. And I was telling that to a mom about a couple years ago, actually probably longer, and I hate to even go there, but I'm going to go there. If you have a child and your child is abusive to you or other people, and you don't get it under control, what do you think they're going to do when they have a wife or a husband or children?
It's going to continue on.
It's going to continue
worse and worse.
So we are obligated to do what we need to do to stop our children from making bad decisions. And we're obligated to get them some kind of counseling or professional help. And by going to a counselor or a therapist or whatever, a psychiatrist, whatever it is that we need to do, I have so many parents that if I do that, I feel like a failure. If you don't, you're the failure.
Oh, my goodness.
You get professional help when you're at a situation where you don't know how to deal with as a parent. Then you ask and you reach out and you get help. That's what you do.
And it's not about being a failure. Things come up. Things come up for whatever reason, whether it's school, you heard or saw something, or you saw something on television, a movie, or some of these violent video games. It happens. And what do you do with it? As a parent, you notice it, you take care of it.
Of course.
You deal with it. And so taking your child to therapy is a tool.
But I want to say also is situations, a lot of situations don't just go away.
Not at all.
They just kind of, it's like watering the garden. They just get worse and worse or better and better depending on how you deal with it. If you don't deal with something that's a problem, usually it gets worse.
You were talking about watering the garden, and when you were saying that, in my mind, I heard festering.
That's about right. I mean, you got to be able to deal with situations. And if you're an adult enough to have a child, you got to be adult enough to deal with issues that come up if you want to, if they're easy, soft, or hard. I have a lot of parents that say, I don't know how to talk to my kid about drugs. I don't know how to talk to my kid about sex. How'd you have them? If you're adult enough to have sex, be adult enough to talk to them about it. I mean, there's just things you got to do as a parent. Comes with being a parent.
And there's help out there. I mean, if you don't know how to talk to your child about certain things, that you have Tuesday nights.
Yeah, with Tuesday nights, you can go to your pastor, your priest. I mean, whoever.
Get on the phone, call somebody.
Yeah, there's all kinds of people out there that can help you come up with communication skills.
Yeah.
Or if you just can't do it, then there are people that can do it for you.
Parenting is not easy.
No.
And sometimes the dreams that you have for your child when they're first born don't necessarily come true that way. You may have to do a lot of adjusting along the road.
You might have to change some of your expectations.
For instance, I don't think when I was born that my mother and father thought, he'll be bullied in school.
Right.
No, it just came up. So what are you going to do? They could have just said, well, deal with it, Mike. I was 6 years old. I didn't know how to deal with it.
You couldn't have dealt with it. That bullying would have kept on going.
Yeah, it would have.
Those kids have power, and they liked it. That's what made them feel good at the moment because they're lacking something else. Yeah. So somebody had to step in and intervene. Yeah. So
fortunately, my mom was bigger than Mr. King size.
Absolutely. Well, I think moms are usually bigger any way you look at it. You know, it's just like, mom's coming.
Never saw Mr. King size again. Never didn't know what his name was.
He moved from Alaska to California fast.
You think he lives next door to me?
I think he left town, and he's waiting.
Thanks a lot, Cary. You really know how to pile it on a guy, don't you?
But what I do want to say is, keep involved with your children. That 2 to 10 minutes conversation we were talking about earlier, let's change that. Let's spend time with our kids. Let's get to know our kids. Let's get to know what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what scares them. Let's get involved in their internet activities when they're young. Let's stay in touch with schools. Let's stay in touch with them.
Oh, boy, I say.
So
got to have that communication. There's no other way of doing it. And you can't just let them to the whims of their friends.
No, because
that's not going to go well.
Well, it'll go, but not where you want it to go. And we need to rub off on our kids. And if we want to rub off on our kids, it means we got to be good role models and examples. So, parents, until next week, this is Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Have a good week.